Hello, thank you for joining me today for this workshop. We're going to be talking about how you can prepare for your exams and how to manage some of the emotions around taking exams and coping with that pressure. My name is Tracy Donachie. I'm a chartered psychologist. I'm a lecturer in sport and exercise psychology, and I'm also a yoga teacher. So hopefully you've been able to access the downloadable link, and you'll have a handout there that you can fill out as we go along. And I'll give you some time to reflect, but at points I'll ask you to pause the video and write down some answers. So the aims of the session, I would like you to hopefully understand stress and anxiety by the end of it. Discover ways to prepare for your future and deal with the stress of exams, and how to cope with your work and manage your workload. So I want you to, in your downloadable handout, you can write your name. I want you to think about something that you feel good about going forward. I want you to think about something that you're anxious about. So that could be aspects of an exam. So for some people, they get anxious about being in a large exam hall. Maybe it's uncertainty of the future. Then I'd like you to think about something you're looking forward to in the future. This is usually the easiest one to answer, and people normally say their holidays, time off, moving out, getting a job, these types of things. And then I want you to think about what you'd like to get out of this workshop. Why have you tuned in today? Have a quick reflection and just think about those things. Then I want you to think about how you would feel right before taking an exam. How would you feel if you're about to sit in an exam, which is something that's really important to you, or you need the grades to get into university? How would you be feeling? Some people will be feeling excited, some people will be feeling scared, some people feeling really motivated and happy, but quite a lot of us will be feeling nervous, anxious, worried. And that's what we're going to be covering today. So, anxiety nerves are normal when something is important to us. So if an exam, school is important to us, then it's likely that we might feel a little bit nervous, anxious when sitting an exam. And sometimes anxiety can be useful. So anxiety fuels action. It tells us that we need to do something. So we know that anxiety stems from the fear response, where if you're driving a car, for example, and someone pulls out in front of you, that fear response tells you to put on the brake. So that's times when anxiety can be useful. But other times when you feel too much anxiety or for long periods of time, then this leads to stress, and stress is likely to impact your performance. But more importantly, if you feel stressed a lot of the time, then it'll also impact your well-being. So how can you tell if someone is stressed out? How would you be able to tell? So for some people, you'd be able to tell in their body, they'd be able to recognise that they feel anxious or stressed by their symptoms in the body. That might be they're starting to sweat, their heart beats really fast, their hands are clammy. So the symptoms of anxiety are showing themselves in a physical way. For other people, it can be more in their mind. So I can't do this, I'm going to fail, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I need to get the perfect result, I cannot make a mistake. So the anxiety shows itself more as worry. For some people, they go hand in hand, so you might say, I can't do this, I'm going to fail, and then in turn you start to feel physical symptoms of anxiety, and it becomes like a cycle. And then this can impact your behaviours. So if you're feeling really stressed and anxious, you might avoid the thing that's stressing you out and making you anxious. So that might be a subject in particular. And you might procrastinate. I'm sure you all know what procrastination is, but this is when you sit down to study, but instead you make yourself a cup of tea, you tidy your room, you go on social media, you tidy more of your room, and before you know it, 8 hours have passed and you have not studied at all. And if we procrastinate over a period of time and exams are approaching, then we have a tendency to cram. So trying to cram as much studying in as possible before exams. And in this time, we'll change our usual habits like eating well, getting good night's rest, and exercising. So we're likely to experience stress and feel those symptoms when something is important to us and when we feel that we have too many demands in our life and not enough resources. So this is the process of stress. So for example, passing the assignment, passing the course is so important to me, but I'm not good enough, so demands. I don't have the time to do it and I won't be able to cope. So there's too many demands and not enough resources, then there's going to be a feeling of stress. So I want you just to take a moment now on your piece of paper, your handout, and think about all the demands you have in your life. So this could be you've got a lot of subjects to juggle and it's quite a challenge. It could be things around the actual exams, so having to keep all the knowledge in. Demands might be certain subjects are harder than others. A demand might be that you need certain grades to get into university. Those are types of demands around the exam. I'll just move on to the next slide while you think about this, and you can take note of any of these that you've got written down. There's other demands that might be that you've underperformed in previous exams or in school, or you might have received negative feedback, so people have told you that you're not good enough, that you won't pass, that you can't do it. Some other demands might relate to you, so your personality. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. Could be language barriers, cultural barriers. Could be body, so you might have an illness or injury, you might be tired, you might not be getting enough in nutrition. Other demands could be your feelings, low mood, anger, guilt. Those can have an impact on our performance. Mind, so self-doubt, you might be quite self-critical, or you might have difficulty focusing. Other people can be a demand, so lack of support, pressure from others, or even relationship issues. That can have an impact on how well we can concentrate for, how well we study, how much focus we have during the exam. Then there's other things that are demanding. Social media, social life, and any other distractions. These can be demands. And there might be other demands that you have that are not on that list. So travel, for example. Having to watch resources online learning. Many different demands. Could be that you have a part-time job, you're trying to set your driving licence test. All of these things could be demands or things in your life that take up time and distract you from studying. So just reflect, what demands do you have? And I will put there'll be a link available for you to watch a little video about one demand, which is perfectionism, and that is about your personality. So some people are prone to feeling more anxiety, stress than others, and perfectionism is one thing that might impact that. Perfectionism is when you've got really high standards for yourself and you're very self-critical. And with this, you always want to achieve perfection, and your self-esteem is based on how well you do. So if you don't do very well in an exam, you get annoyed at yourself and you'll beat yourself up. But it's more important that you don't base your self-esteem on your achievements, and you think about the things that you have more control over, whether that's being a kind person, putting in effort. So personality might be a demand for you. But I want you just to think about what's the difference between trying your best and perfectionism, because obviously we want and encourage you to try your best, but we don't encourage you to try and be perfect, because that's unrealistic. So I'm going to read these statements and you're going to think whether this is trying your best or is it perfectionism. So studying for a test, taking it with confidence and feeling good about your score of 9 out of 10 or getting a B instead of an A, is this trying your best or is this perfectionism? If you said trying your best, then you are right. Writing your report over 3 times, staying up late 2 nights in a row and handing it in late because you felt you had to get it just right, and then still feeling bad about your report. Is this trying your best or is this perfectionism? This is perfectionism. Being willing to try new things, even when they're a little scary, and learning from your experiences and your mistakes. Trying your best or perfectionism? This is trying your best. 2 more. Cramming at last minute, taking a test with sweaty palms and feeling bad about your B+ because your friend got an A. Is this trying your best or is this perfectionism? This is perfectionism. Well done. Last one. Always working alone because no one else can do as good a job as you, and you're not about to let anyone else slide by on your A. Is this perfectionism or trying your best? This is perfectionism. So there's a subtle difference between trying your best and perfectionism. We want you to try hard, put in effort, but trying to be perfect will just cause us more stress because it's unrealistic and we cannot achieve perfect results or perfect grades. So there's other things that we can draw upon to try and alleviate the stress and our nerves, and there's many resources that we have. Sometimes we don't realise we have all these resources, and it's important to try and reflect and think of the things that we can draw upon to try and help us when we get stressed out or exams feel a little bit too much. So you might be really good at managing your time. You might be really good at study skills, study techniques. So you might be really good at managing the workload. You might set yourself a schedule. You might stick to a timetable. That might be one of the resources that you have. Some people have really good experience of exams and they've built up a muscle memory and they've practiced these skills to be able to deal with the pressures of exams. Individuals, so talent, intelligence, knowledge, effort. So you might be talented, you might be really smart, you might have the ability to acquire knowledge and retain it, or you might be someone who has really high effort levels, and that is a resource that you can draw upon. You might be someone who is really good at looking after their body. So you get food, water, enough rest, enough exercise. So you're really good at managing your body. You might also be someone who's really good at managing your emotions. So you are able to control your emotions and your mood. So despite getting down or getting angry or getting upset, you're able to talk about it. You're able to manage these emotions. Another resource is your mind. So if you've got good attitude, confidence, if you're resilient, of course I think these are the most important, being a psychologist. And then lastly, people. So some people can be a source of stress, but other people can be a great source of support. So friends, family, teachers, any other people who are a source of support. And these are the people that we can draw upon to help us. So I want you to reflect, and I want you to think about all the resources you have. So write them all down and reflect. So take a moment and write those down, and then once you're finished, I want you to look at your list, and if your demands are much larger than your resources, then it's likely that you'll feel a little bit stressed or anxious. If your resources and your demands are the same, or you have more resources, then you're maybe less likely to be stressed out. So at this point you might want to focus on resources, or what resources do you have that you're not using, and how can you use them to help with the demands that you have. So if you know that you have good time management skills but you're not using them, how can you find ways to try and use those skills? So the one part I'd like to touch upon is attitude. So I think this is the most important thing. So attitude is the way we think, it is our approach to things, it is our nature, and has impact on our energy levels, how we respond to failure, and I think it's very, very important for success, and I'll show you why that is the case. So this is the formula for success. This formula is used by, I've worked with the national football teams, and they use this as a way to capture whether they think a football player will be successful or not, and they use this based on the importance of attitude. So you would rate yourself on your knowledge, so that's your ability to acquire knowledge about a subject or all your subjects. Your talent, so this would be your intelligence. So you would score these out of 5. Your knowledge, your ability to acquire knowledge, out of 5. You add that together with your talent or your intelligence score out of 5, and then you multiply that by your attitude. So 5 being you have a great attitude, you're highly motivated, you put in effort, you're respectful, you listen, you try. Bad attitude, a 1, is you don't put in an effort, your motivation is low, you normally can't be bothered, you might be disrespectful, these things. So choose that score out of 5, and you're going to add your knowledge and your talent and multiply it by your attitude. So you can put that in your resources box. And let me show you how this works. So the tall one is my sister, and the other one is me. The scores at the top are my sister's scores. So she was a very, very good footballer. She, at 15, was playing for the full national squad. If anyone knows football, she was left-footed, so she could kick a ball from left back all the way to the opposite corner of the football pitch, and that's when she was 15. So very talented and was very good at acquiring knowledge, and she had knowledge of the game. Me, on the other hand, I scored myself 2+2, but that's been quite generous. I first started playing football when I was 12. My coach told me that I was rubbish and that I should give up. I would never make it because I ran around like a headless chicken and I was terrible. So I've given myself 2+2, but that's probably been quite generous, and I was probably a 1+1, but let's stick to that. And my sister was probably a 5+5, but don't want to give her too much of a big head. So very, very talented. However, my sister's attitude wasn't very good. She wasn't very motivated. She wouldn't really try at training. The coach would talk and give her feedback. She wouldn't listen. So her attitude score would be a 1. So her chance of success out of 50 is 8. And I'm sure quite a lot of you have scored higher than that. Me, on the other hand, I had a very good attitude, so despite my coach telling me I wasn't good enough, I would never make it, I would ask for feedback, I would try hard, I would put in effort after training. My attitude was a 5. So my chance of success was 20 out of 50, and I suspect many of you will have a higher score than 22. So how does this look in real life? Well, my sister, at 17, she was called up by the Scottish national football coach and asked to go to Italy, and she said, nah, can't really be bothered, why would I do that? So she stopped playing football, and she is very lazy. If she could drive to her car, she would. So yep, that reflects her 8 out of 50, not very successful when it comes to football. Me, on the other hand, even though I was rotten, I had a good attitude, and I was able to play football semi-professionally in Iceland, Australia, and I also got a full scholarship to play football or soccer in America. And this wasn't because I was good or because I was talented, it was because I had a good attitude. And by having a good attitude, I was able to change those scores. So I was able to increase those 2s up to a 3, 4. So my chance of success shows that I was able to be successful despite not being the most talented football player. So I'd like you now to think about your attitude, and what is one part of your attitude that is really good? And then I want you to think about what part of your attitude could be improved and how will you improve it. So think about the good part and then think about something that you could improve. So for me, I was motivated, and something that I could have improved would be that perhaps when I don't like things as much, then I will put in less effort. So it's about putting in effort for everything. So next thing I'd like you to think about is how you would help a stressed friend. So your friend's stressing about her exam, his exam, and you think, how can I help? What would you do? So I'd like you in the box, write down, give you 10 seconds, write down the one thing that you do to help your friend. And usually when I'm delivering this in schools and classrooms, people will say that they'll help their friend by giving them some positive encouragement. They'll distract them, take them for a walk, take them for something to eat. I like when they say that it would give them a cup of tea or bring them food, because I would love that. Other people might study with them or give them some help or create a quiz with them and try and support them that way. So think about the way that you would support your friend. So there's many ways that we can support a friend, but the message that I want to give today is that often we're really good and really kind to other people, but we're not so kind to ourselves. So if we're stressed out, normally we're quite harsh on ourselves, we're not very nice to ourselves, but really what I'm asking you to try and do is either talk to yourself as you would your friend, or treat yourself as you would your friend. I ask people about what they would say to themselves when they make a mistake or they feel that they've not done as well as they would like to. And normally we're very harsh and we say some quite horrible things to ourselves. Normally at least 1 or 2 people will say that they swear at themselves. So even as young as 11 years old, I've worked with kids who will call themselves names. They'll be quite horrible to themselves. And then I ask them to say that to me, and they won't. So often we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to anyone else. And I suspect for some of the things that you say to yourself, you would not say to me. And also if you did say them, I would probably be upset or cry or angry. So I encourage you to try and make a habit of talking to yourself as you would someone else as your best friend. So now I want to give you my 10 top tips for managing stress, going forward and feeling good. So it's important that we manage ourselves and our expectations. As I said before, when we get stressed, the things that we know are good for us usually go out the window. So getting enough sleep, having water, eating fruit, doing exercise, those things normally get pushed aside and we don't do them. So try and keep those things constant. Then I encourage you to manage expectations. If you're high in perfectionism, so really high standards for yourself, then often you'll feel like you've not done enough. So you'll get to the end of the day from studying and you'll think, oh, I didn't do enough. So what I like to do is, in my planner, I write down all the things that I need to do, and then I check off at the end of the day all the things that I've achieved. And by doing this, I get a clear idea of exactly what I've achieved in that day, instead of it just being in my mind thinking, oh, I've not done enough. So write down the things that you need to achieve and then check in at the end of the day and see if you've achieved them. When you're writing them at the start of the day, I always have to go and check them to see if they're realistic or not, because I set myself quite high expectations and I have to ask myself, is it realistic that I can fit all these things in one day? So check in with that. Also to do with managing work, and especially with time. When we're studying, it's often that we procrastinate and we don't study in a way that's the same as an exam. So set yourself some time pressures, whether it's an hour where you do work and do quizzes like you would an exam, or for me, I find the method of 25 to 5 or 45 to 10 works the most effectively for me. So what I do is I set my alarm for 25 minutes, I study intensely for those 25 minutes, my phone goes away, and then my alarm goes off, boom, 25 minutes, and then I give myself 5 minutes to, mess around on Facebook, social media, and then I go again, 25 minutes, 5 minutes rest, and I try to do 3 chunks. If I've got good concentration for the day, then I might push it up to 45 and get a longer break, but usually that's not the case. So 25, 5, and I study one topic at a time, and I write down what I've covered for each block. Then at the end of the day, you'll have a list of the topics and the chunks. This is really good for the subjects that we're avoiding, because instead of thinking I have to study for 8 hours, all you have to tell yourself is all I have to do is study intensely for 25 minutes. And 25 minutes seems much more achievable than, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And then I encourage you to reach out and work with other people. So can you quiz other people? Can you study with other people? And recent research has shown that if you create quiz questions and test these quiz questions on other people, then you're going to be more successful in the actual exam, as opposed to the people who try to read and memorise. So creating quizzes and working with other people is very effective when preparing for exams. Another thing to do is manage your emotions. So for some people, they like to be quite chilled out, relaxed. So this is my picture of the meditating person here. So they work better when they're very relaxed. For other people, it's when they're really hyper, adrenaline, excited, lots of energy, and they perform better. But for most people, they perform better in the middle. So they need a little bit of anxiety, so they're not asleep, but they don't have too much that they're rah and too energetic. And you can think about your last performance, or where you felt really good about yourself in a performance situation, and think about where you were. Did you have a little bit of anxiety? Did you have a big bit of anxiety? Or was it somewhere in the middle? And I know, working with athletes and when I played sport, it was somewhere in the middle. Too little anxiety, I was asleep. Too much, I was running around like a headless chicken. So find out where's right for you. And usually at this point I play some music, because music is really helpful to get you into that point. So if you're the day of an exam or a sports performance and you're too chilled out, then maybe use some energetic, happy, rock, uplifting music to try and get you a bit more energetic. On the other side of that, if you need to be really calm, chilled out, and you're not, then try and find some music that calms you down, that's more relaxing. And we know that we can manage our emotions through our perception. So if we see an exam as being a threatening situation, a fear situation, then it's going to have an impact on how we feel physically. So our heart rate and different things like that. But if you see anxiety as a good thing and see the situation as an opportunity, then it will be better for us physically. And we know that from research, if we see anxiety as a good thing, you're more likely to live longer. And if you see anxiety as a good thing and you help other people, you'll live even longer. So the moral of that is, try to see anxiety as your friend, as excitement, as opportunity, and help other people. And not only will you perform better, but you will live longer. Another thing that creates anxiety is our perception of the situation. So sometimes we think it's a big deal if we make a mistake. Oh my goodness, everyone's looking at us. Usually in football we get this, where you have someone who thinks that everyone's watching that small mistake they made, and that the perception and the importance of the situation is very, very huge. So in the exam, if you feel like that, you don't know one answer, then try to minimise the significance of the event. So if you look down from the moon, would you actually be able to see that one question? And is it actually quite likely that you'll pass, even if you don't get that one question right? So try to minimise the significance when you're in the exam. Maybe not before, you won't study at all. And number 5, we can only think one thing at a time. So it's your choice whether you think you can, then you can, or if you think I can't. So often we get into a habit of thinking, oh, we can't do this, I can't cope, I can't pass, I'm not good enough. But you can quickly change that into something more helpful. And you have control over that. We can only think one thing, so you choose whether you'd rather think something that's helpful or unhelpful. You can also think about ratios. So I use this quite a bit when working with people. I worked with someone who had a phobia of going in public transport. So they had fear, they were anxious, they were nervous, they were stressed about going in public transport. And I asked why, and they said, well, I'm going to be sick on public transport. I said, okay, how many times have you been on public transport? They said about 1,000. I said, okay, how many times have you been sick? They said, none, but one time I saw someone being sick. I said, okay, so if we use that, there's a chance 1 in 1,000 times someone might be sick. And that's maybe the same as you for your tests and exams. We've been tested and taken quizzes, exams since we were really, really young, and you've probably sat 1,000 tests in your lifetime. And maybe you've only failed 1, maybe you failed 5, maybe you failed 10. But I suspect you've not failed all 1,000 tests. If you have failed all 1,000 tests, then maybe you have to reconsider your study habits, but I'm guessing not. So when you go into the exam and you think, I'm going to fail, think about those 999 times that you actually passed. Number 7, thinking about that time that you passed, Or thinking about a time that you were in a pressure situation, you worried about it beforehand, you felt stressed, but actually it went okay and you handled your stress. How did you do that? What skills, what techniques did you use? So you can write that down. What skills, techniques did you use? What evidence do you have that you can actually deal with the stress and the pressure of the situation? So think about that. I like to use a little motto or put it into one word to allow me to think about that easily when I get into the next situation that I feel pressure, stress, things like that. Then I don't play football anymore, I now teach yoga, and before every yoga class I get my class to set a mantra. And this is an I am statement, so it's in a positive and present tense, and you try to imagine how you'd like to feel. So going into the exam, how would you like to feel? So you choose a word, so relaxed, confident, calm, energized, and then you put I am in front of that. I am calm, I am confident, I am relaxed, I am smart, I am peaceful. You choose your I ams and put that down onto your piece of paper. You can couple your I ams with your music. This can be helpful. It can also help you if you start to think about negative things or I can't do this in the exam. You can just quickly think of your I am. I am calm. And I don't know if you've heard of power poses, but my friend Jo, who's a wonderful TV presenter, voiceover actor, she introduced me to power poses. So if we stand nice and tall, I'd normally demonstrate, well, I can actually demonstrate this. So if we stand nice and tall, we do this, we do yoga pose, then we feel a sense of power and confidence. Whereas if I'm sitting in an exam and I'm like this and I'm biting my nails, it sends signals to the brain that I'm not confident. So we can trick our brain by creating power poses and making us feel more confident. So sitting up like this, walking into a room like this, so a situation you might feel anxious, stand up tall. My friend Jo, she does a warrior too. That makes her feel powerful, strong, confident. For me, you can see here in the picture, I like to do a handstand. So doing a handstand makes me feel calm, composed and confident. So anytime that I'm feeling nervous before something, I'll find a space, do a little handstand and I feel better. So you choose a power pose that's right for you, and that could just be that in the middle of an exam you sit upright and just take a moment to breathe. And then when you're in the exam, have the acceptance that you have done enough, you've studied enough, and you've done the best that you can do up until that time. And then when you're in an exam, try to be in the moment. So if you find that your mind is racing, your thoughts are going too fast and you can't concentrate, simple tip is to sit upright in your power position and then just try and breathe into the belly. Just take, 1 minute of an exam isn't too much to make yourself feel a little bit better, and just try to breathe into the belly. When we get stressed out, our breath seems to get stuck into our chest area, so it's really important. You can sit up and then just try and breathe into that belly area, and that gives the body the sense of being more relaxed. So now, to summarise, understanding your demands and your resources and trying to find ways to draw upon your resources is important. Trying to find ways to understand your best level of anxiety and knowing how you work best. Do you work with a little anxiety or a lot of anxiety? How do you work best? And then going through all those strategies that I've given you. So with that in mind, I'd like you to set yourself some goals. You can write down on the space that's created in the workbook. Something that you're going to stop doing. So something you do right now that's not helpful. Something you're going to start doing. Something that you do already, that you do well, it's helpful, and you're going to continue to do it. So stop, start and continue. Write down, set yourself some goals and try to work on those to make you feel better and able to manage any stress, anxiety around taking your exams. So I'd like to say thank you very much for listening, and hopefully this has been helpful for you. And just remember that hard work, good attitude pays off. Thank you so much for listening.